Welcome back to the program. Let's go to my next guest. Women's reproductive health may never be the same thanks to my next guest. There is this ingenious, first-of-its-kind device. It's an intravaginal ring that can protect women from STDs like HIV and herpes and unwanted pregnancy, and is soon to go to clinical trials. To discuss the development and how it works and when it'll be available is Patrick Kiser, Ph.D. Dr. Kiser is an associate professor of biomedical engineering at Northwestern University. Hello, Dr. Kiser, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Robert. Thanks for inviting me on.
Great. Well, after looking at your study that was published recently on the online journal PLOS ONE, I knew I had to have you on to get a little more detail and maybe have you break it down a little bit for those of us that aren't engineers.
Yeah, right. It is a pretty sophisticated paper we published there. I think our goal with the paper was to put together really one of the best papers on intravaginal rings ever written. I think we came pretty close to that. But yeah, so I'd like to tell you a little bit about the ring.
Sure.
This ring, so an intravaginal ring is a torus-shaped device. It's like an O-ring, really. It's just kind of a big O-ring. It's about I could give you the measurements in inches. I have them here. It's about it's a couple centimeters across, and a couple inches across from the top to bottom, and the polymer part of the ring is less than a quarter inch across. Okay, and all intravaginal rings to date are made with either plastics or silicone, and they're soft materials that basically can be pinched into an oval shape and inserted into the vagina. And when the ring comes in, the ring is loaded with drug, and when it comes in contact with vaginal tissue, it starts to release its drug, and that's fundamentally how they function.
Okay, and what prevents the contraceptive from the antiviral from mixing or? Right.
So, well, we can get a little bit into design first, but I think maybe we should talk a little bit about the two drugs that we're trying to deliver.
Sure.
So,
go right ahead.
There are, for example, the well-known contraceptive hormonal ring called NuvaRing elutes two drugs simultaneously, but those two drugs are actually, from a chemical perspective, very similar, and so so both of those drugs are sort of mixed together in the core of the ring, and then they're eluted, or they diffuse out of the ring simultaneously from the same reservoir. In our case, we are trying to do something on top of hormonal contraception. We're trying to stop sexual acquisition of HIV, and so we're working with two drugs. One drug is called tenofovir, and tenofovir is used by 3.5 million people on the planet today to prevent replication of HIV in their immune systems. And then the contraceptive agent we're working with is called levonorgestrel, and most folks are familiar with levonorgestrel in the form of Plan B. It's the hormonal contraceptive agent that one can take to prevent egg implantation after unprotected sex. But it's also levonorgestrel is also used in Norplants. Many folks have heard about that. It's also used in this amazing contraceptive device called the Mirena IUD. And we really modeled our device on the Mirena IUD. The Mirena IUD delivers a very low dose of levonorgestrel, about 10 micrograms a day. And And its main function is to simply thicken cervical mucus so that sperm can't get into the uterus. And if sperm don't get into the uterus, you're not going to fertilize an egg in the fallopian tubes. And so, and then the drug tenofovir basically is absorbed into vaginal tissue, where it's eluted from the ring, absorbed into vaginal tissue, and there it diffuses inside of cells that HIV can affect, and inside the cell it interrupts if an HIV virus comes in contact with the cell during or some point after intercourse, it would interrupt the process that the HIV virus goes through to infect the cell, and thereby protecting the cell from viral infection. So that's kind of how this thing works. So we're delivering these two drugs simultaneously from this ring, so I can stop there and probably have some other questions.
Yeah, of course. Now, one of the more astounding things I found out about this was that the antivirals and the contraception are administered via the ring, and it lasts for 90 days. And then, so after the 90 days, what then?
Yeah. So all intravaginal rings, and there are 4 intravaginal rings on the market in the U.S. and Europe. They all release contraceptive hormones. They all release hormones. There are several rings that are used by pre- and postmenopausal women for symptoms of, basically to treat symptoms of menopause, and they release estrogen. And then there's this Nuva ring, contraceptive intravaginal ring. They're all inserted by the user themselves. There's training brochures that come with the device, so that women can kind of see a couple different ways to insert the ring. And the ring shape, I think one of the basic functions of the ring shape is that it's easy to hook with your finger. And so to remove the ring, a woman just inserts her finger into her vagina, hooks the ring, and pulls it out. And so they're easy to insert and easy to remove. And so the reason we designed this particular ring, like Nuva ring, works for about a month. The reason we designed the ring for 90 days is we're trying to reduce the cost of the device for global health applications in low-income countries. And so one way to do that is to increase the duration that the ring works for. And so we would expect that a woman would insert the ring and probably remove it from time to time to wash it off, or maybe she would. In some cases, women will not want to have sex with the ring, and so they'll remove it for sex. And that's, one of the things we need to study is that, it's going to be safe to do that.
Sure.
And if so, how long can you remove it? But no physician is required, or really even any special training. And then after 90 days, the ring would be thrown away. I think one of the really cool things about this device is that a whole year's worth of contraception and HIV protection could be put into a very small package, and it wouldn't require a large volume, and it should be very convenient to be able to use this type of device.
Yeah. Now, were there any special challenges that you faced while you were designing this ring?
Oh yeah, this device, in some ways, it's up there as one of the most sophisticated drug delivery devices ever made, and it's certainly the most sophisticated intravaginal ring ever made. And there were many design challenges. First, the two drugs, levonorgestrel and tenofovir, couldn't be more different from each other physically. Tenofovir is highly water soluble, and levonorgestrel is highly water insoluble. And so I think many of your listeners might remember back in chemistry class the old adage or rule that like dissolves alike. so for the drugs to be released from the plastics, the drugs need to be soluble in the plastics. And so we have to match the property of the plastic up with the property of the drug. And so fundamentally, since we had these two drugs, we needed at least two separate polymers to deliver each one of these very different drugs effectively. So, and probably more actually. As it turned out, we ended up using three different polymers. Plus, there's just a remarkable difference in the dose that we need to deliver both of these drugs. I mentioned earlier that the contraceptive intravaginal ring, NuvaRing, delivers two drugs, an estrogen and a progestin, and those drugs are roughly delivered at very similar doses. There's a slight difference in the doses, but it's not that large. Whereas in our case, we had 1,000 times different dose. We wanted to deliver 10 or 20 micrograms a day of levonorgestrel and 10,000 micrograms a day of tenofovir. And so that is an amazing difference to try to design a ring that would work or any really drug delivery device that would work for 90 days and effectively deliver both of these agents that are very different and at very different doses. And so it took us 6 years and more than $1 million to figure out how to do all this.
Oh, wow.
Others are trying to basically mix the antiretroviral with the contraceptive together into one polymer, and they're really not having much luck. We tried that early on. We just did it because our funding agency wanted us to do it, but we didn't think it would work, and indeed it didn't work. We realized that we really needed a modular design to accomplish the task to deliver these two agents. So we figured out a way to kind of modularize the drug delivery systems. We selected polymers that could be easily attached to each other using various technologies to weld polymers to each other, the polymer pieces to each other, and we were able to sort of independently design the drug release profile for each drug, and then weld these drug delivery, what we call segments, together to ultimately form the ring shape in the final device.
All right. Well, you kind of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then another thing that we realized as we were building these things is that in making prototypes and testing them and studying their behavior and all of that, is that as it turns out, the contraceptive agent can diffuse effectively through the polymers. And so we had to figure out a way to separate the two segments from each other, so that we could keep the contraceptive agent in the in the part of the ring that we wanted to keep it in, so that when it was sitting around in the package waiting to be used, we didn't end up with drug all over the place. And so that was another design challenge. We had to deal with stability of the polymers and physical stability of the hormonal contraceptive agent. It's the levonorgestrel can crystallize on the surface of the ring, and we had to figure out a way to prevent that. And then we had to figure out a way to get 2 grams of tenofovir into the core of this ring, and we had to develop new manufacturing technologies to kind of put all this stuff together and ultimately make the product that was reported in PLOS One last week.
Yeah, well, I guess to sum it up, it wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
Now, you kind of touched on this briefly. So when you first came up with the idea for this product, was your target population women in the developing world, or was it? It really was,
yeah. This project was funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, and this is part of the State Department of the federal government. And and there the focus really is the needs of folks in, particularly that are being devastated by the HIV/AIDS pandemic. I think a lot of your readers might not, or a lot of your listeners might not understand that in some parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the rates of HIV infection in young women, can be as high as 10%, 20%, even as high as 40%. And so you grab, you randomly select 10 young women on the street, and 4 of them could be HIV positive. And so it's just it's a horrible, devastating pandemic, and so it's really one of the huge biomedical needs right now globally is to develop technologies that women can use to protect themselves that don't require condom negotiation, okay? And we're talking about women in countries that are not as empowered as they are here in the U.S. Right. We don't have the kind of equality, women don't have the kind of equality in other countries like they have here. And so even though condoms are used a lot, they're not used that well. And so by empowering women, giving them a tool that they can use to control their reproductive health and their HIV status is really is desperately needed. And so we're really trying to sort of simultaneously attack these two problems. The unmet need in contraceptive technology. There are over 200 million women globally who would like to use some kind of contraceptive, but don't have access. And then simultaneously you have this HIV pandemic raging, which there's been amazing amounts of progress, in attacking HIV, but more work needs to be done. And this is, I think, this is one potential solution. Obviously, it's going to really require to attack this virus. It's really going to require multiple types of technologies. Testing, more and higher availability of condoms, other types of antiretrovirals, injectables, all kinds of other technologies that we and other groups are working on to try to help folks, both in sub-Saharan Africa. But I mean, this whole story is really resonating in the U.S. here. I would think so, and in Europe with American women. And it's not surprising that it would resonate, right? It's really, this is a first of its kind device. I think there's a lot of excitement around this kind of technology, a single device that would, a single intervention, a single behavior change, and simply inserting the ring, a woman could be protected from the things that scare her the most. And I think it sort of strikes a chord in people's minds. They're a little surprised that something like this would even be possible. That it might be possible to make a ring that would work against HIV and HSV and unwanted pregnancy, and that it actually exists and might go into the clinic soon, and maybe they could actually get a prescription for one someday. And I think that's really exciting. I think it's groundbreaking, and I'm really honored to be able to work on such a important project. It's been great experience, and I've learned a lot. And I think we're going to see more and more cool new technologies coming out in the reproductive space. Over the next 10 years, and I'm really hopeful.
Okay, great. Well, Patrick, I'm running up against the break. One quick question. I'll give you 30 seconds. When do you think clinical trials will begin?
We are going into the clinic early this summer in a small phase 1 trial in the U.S. to basically look and see what does the ring work in the way we want it to work? Is it safe? Do women have any side effects from using the ring? And do we get the drug levels that we think will be effective at preventing HIV infection and unwanted pregnancy?
Okay, fantastic. This is clearly an incredible step forward in the world of women's sexual health. I've been talking to Dr. Patrick Kiser with Northwestern University. Thank you, sir, for coming on the show.
Thank you. Have a great day, Robert.
You too. All right. Well,